On a bright summer afternoon, deep in the sun-drenched forests of Montana, the cicadas hummed like a distant choir. But the peace shattered when an 8-year-old girl in a pastel pink jacket stepped into a clearing. And beside her, a black and tan German shepherd moved like a loyal shadow. Hikers who crossed their path whispered about them. Lily Carter, the fearless little girl who wandered too far into the woods, and Shadow, the strange shepherd whose amber eyes seemed to understand danger before it even arrived. Some said the dog wasn't just smart. He anticipated things. Then Shadow froze. A deep, rumbling growl rolled from his chest as the sunlight flickered across the trees. Lily clutched her pink jacket tighter, because just ahead, glowing in the summer light, were the fresh boot prints of a man the forest hadn't seen in years. In that instant, the woods held its breath. A secret was waking, one that would pull the little girl and her shepherd into a chase far darker than any summer night. Before we begin, don't forget to like, share, and tell us where you're watching from. Your support keeps these stories alive. The summer sun over Bozeman, Montana, burned with a warm, almost playful intensity, the kind that made the sky impossibly blue and filled the forests with that sweet, resinous scent of pine and sun-baked bark. July had always been the gentlest month here. Bright mornings, long amber afternoons, and evenings humming with crickets. Yet beneath its beauty, the wilderness still held an ancient, untamed edge. Anyone who lived near the mountains knew that summer could turn dangerous the moment someone let their guard down. 8-year-old Lily Carter had never been the cautious type. She was a tiny slip of a girl with golden hair that curled softly at the ends, wide blue eyes, lightly freckled cheeks, and the kind of boundless energy that made adults both laugh and worry. She always wore her pastel pink jacket, even in warm weather, its sleeves slightly too long, its fabric smudged with dirt from climbing rocks and chasing bugs. Her mother said she looked like a wandering strawberry marshmallow, and Lily fully embraced the title. She was mischievous, kind, endlessly curious, and blessed with the unshakable belief that everything in the world wanted to be her friend. Her parents had taken her on a weekend camping trip to the foothills outside Bozeman. Towering pines, sunlit trails, and a small blue lake that reflected the sky like polished glass. Her father, Mark Carter, was a tall, broad-shouldered man in his late 30s, with a square jaw, sun-leathered skin, and short brown hair peppered with early gray. A former firefighter who had seen more tragedy than he ever talked about, he carried a quiet, protective intensity. He had learned the hard way that disasters strike when people are sure they're safe. His eyes were always alert, scanning for risk even as he smiled. Her mother, Sarah Carter, was almost the opposite. Slender, graceful, with long chestnut brown hair and warm hazel eyes. Sarah had the gentle softness of someone who believed the world was still beautiful, even when it was frightening. She was a children's therapist, patient and calm, the kind of woman who crouched to eye level when speaking to a child. But even she had her edges. Years of listening to broken families had taught her how quickly a small mistake could turn into a lifetime of regret. And today, that mistake had already begun. Lily had wandered. It wasn't intentional. It never was. One moment she was standing beside the family tent, brushing crumbs from her jacket after a peanut butter sandwich. The next, a cluster of butterflies, yellow wings glowing like fragments of sunlight, floated past her face. Lily giggled, eyes sparkling, and followed them with the single-minded enthusiasm only children possess. The butterflies drifted deeper into the woods, through a shaft of golden light, where dust motes sparkled like suspended fireflies. And Lily, humming to herself, stepped after them. She didn't notice the sounds of her parents unpacking. She didn't hear her father calling her name. She didn't realize the path behind her had already disappeared. By the time the butterflies scattered, she was alone. At first, the forest still seemed safe. The sunlight trickled through the canopy like warm honey. Leaves rustled gently overhead. But then the cicadas quieted. The wind stilled, and Lily's small heartbeat grew loud in her ears. "Mom," she whispered. No answer, only the whisper of branches shifting overhead, and the sudden unfamiliar weight of solitude. Her throat tightened. She turned in a slow circle, trying to remember the direction she had walked from. Everything looked the same. Towering pines, patches of sunlight, a carpet of needles and moss. Panic bubbled up inside her chest. Then she heard it. A sound so faint, she almost thought she imagined it. A hoarse, broken whimper coming from behind a fallen tree. Lily froze. Her breath caught in her throat. Another whimper. Weak, pained, desperate. Despite her fear, her kindness overcame her. She stepped toward the fallen log, pushing aside fern leaves with trembling fingers. And there, half buried under a heavy branch, lay a German shepherd, young and strong yet wounded. His coat was a dark blend of black and tan, though the fur around his back leg was matted with dirt. His muscles were lean and defined, showing he had once been healthy, maybe even trained. But now he panted heavily, sides rising and falling with distress. His warm, amber-brown eyes locked onto Lily's with a plea unmistakable even across this species. "Oh no. You're hurt," she whispered, voice cracking. She knew dogs. She loved dogs. And something about this one, its intelligent gaze, the way its ears twitched weakly, felt different, older, as if the dog had known hardship long before she found him. Hands shaking, she crouched and grasped the fallen branch. It was heavier than she expected. Tears, tears welled in her eyes, but she grit her teeth, set her sneakers, and pulled with all the strength her little body had. The branch budged. She screamed from effort, lifted again, and this time freed the dog's trapped leg. He whimpered, pushing himself out from under the debris, then staggered and collapsed beside her. "It's okay. I've got you," she murmured through tears as she tore the pink cloth from her jacket's inner lining and wrapped it gently around his injured leg. When she leaned back, he lifted his head and pressed his muzzle against her jacket, as if thanking her. She smiled shakily. "Your shadow," she said, "'cause you're dark, but your eyes are bright." Shadow blinked once, as if accepting the name. The sun began dipping lower, its light stretching long golden beams across the forest floor. Lily felt a flicker of hope. Maybe she and Shadow could find the trail back together. "Come on," she whispered. "We'll go home, okay?" But before she could stand, a deep, rumbling growl drifted from somewhere beyond the trees. Low, resonant, and far too large to belong to anything friendly. Shadow's ears snapped up. His body stiffened. He stepped in front of Lily, fur bristling, his newly bandaged leg trembling yet ready. Lily held her breath. Something was moving in the forest. The growl from deep in the forest still echoed in Lily's ears as she clutched Shadow's fur, her heart thumping like frantic wings. The German Shepherd remained stiff in front of her, ears sharp, muscles trembling in alert tension. Yet there was something strangely calm in his stance, as if protecting a frightened child was something he had done many times before. The danger didn't come closer, only lingered, heavy and unseen, until at last the woods fell back into a warm, deceptive stillness. Lily swallowed hard, wiped her cheeks with her sleeve, and whispered, Let's keep going, okay?" Shadow flicked his tail once, reassuring, and nudged her gently forward. They followed a faint dirt trail now glowing under the fading summer sun. The air was warm, filled with drifting gold as sunlight filtered through tall pines. Lily stayed close, gripping the straps of her tiny pink backpack. Shadow walked ahead just enough to lead, but always turned back every few steps, eyes checking on her with that deep, unreadable intelligence. Each time she stepped too close to a tangled root or a steep dip, Shadow would tug her pink jacket gently with his teeth. Not aggressively, more like a worried older brother. The deeper they walked, the more Lily began noticing little things about him. Shadow never barked, not once. He listened. He studied. Every rustle of leaves made him angle his head. Every shift of wind made his nose twitch. His injured leg, though wrapped in pink cloth, barely slowed him. He moved with the confident precision of a creature trained for tasks she couldn't yet imagine. And then Lily noticed something else. When they reached a meadow drenched in warm sunlight, long grass dancing, fireflies beginning to glow under the coming dusk. Shadow paused. He lowered his head as Lily scratched gently under his chin. Her fingers brushed against something rough beneath the thick fur of his collarbone. A metallic edge. She frowned, parted the fur gently with her small fingers, and found it. An old metal tag, weathered and dented. Lily squinted at the faded engraving. K9? She read aloud, then murmured, K9. Like police dogs? Shadow met her gaze, those amber-brown eyes deep and knowing. "You're a police dog?" she asked softly. "Why are you alone out here?" But the German Shepherd simply blinked and sat quietly in the warm grass, guarding her like a silent sentinel. She sensed he understood her words, understood more than most dogs could. But whatever story hid behind his eyes, he wasn't able to give it voice. As the sun lowered but still cast a bright golden glow over the forest, Lily's stomach rumbled. She reached into her bag and shared her snacks with Shadow. He ate gently, never snatching, never begging, just accepting what she offered as though it were some kind of solemn pact between them. They continued walking until the trees parted and revealed a weathered forest ranger outpost, a small wooden cabin long abandoned. The wooden boards were sun-bleached, the windows dusty, and the porch sagging with age. Yet the slanted rays of evening sunlight pierced through the cracks in the walls, scattering bright strips of gold across the dusty floor like spilled treasure. "Maybe we can rest here," Lily whispered. Shadow sniffed the ground thoroughly, circling, ears twitching. Satisfied, he trotted inside first. Lily followed, setting her backpack on a crate and unscrewing her water bottle. She held it out for Shadow, who lapped gratefully. She shared the last of her crackers with him, and this time he leaned lightly against her side in gratitude. For a moment, everything felt peaceful. The warm light, the soft dust drifting lazily, the familiar comfort of having someone, something, beside her. Lily hugged her knees, resting her cheek on them. "We'll find a way home tomorrow," she whispered. Right, Shadow? Then the forest shifted. At first, she didn't notice. The light was still warm, still bright, but the sounds changed. No more birdsong, no more cicadas, just silence. Shadow's ears angled sharply. Lily's breath caught. Outside, a branch snapped, loud, deliberate, not like an animal scurrying, more like a boot crushing dry wood. Another sound followed, a dragging noise, heavy and irregular, like something pulling weight through thick grass. Shadow stepped in front of Lily, hackles rising, his silhouette glowing in the shafts of sunlight like a dark guardian. A quiet but fierce growl rumbled in his chest. Lily's hands trembled. She crawled backward until her back pressed against the wall, her eyes flicking toward the small side window. That was when she saw him. A man. Tall, easily over 6 feet. Broad shoulders straining beneath a camouflage hunting jacket. His skin was weather-beaten, tanned and scarred, his jaw square and lined with days-old stubble. His hair was dark and unkempt, hanging just above brows that furrowed deeply like someone accustomed to suspicion. His eyes, cold, calculating, a piercing gray, swept over the cabin like he was scanning prey. He carried a hunting rifle, thick-fingered hands resting on the barrel with unsettling ease. He looked like a man shaped by misfortune and hardened by survival, someone who had lived too long in the wilderness, where empathy fades and instinct sharpens into something else, something dangerous, something that didn't hesitate. His gaze stopped at the cabin window, and he smiled, slow, deliberate, unsettlingly calm. Lily's breath vanished. Shadow's growl deepened, vibrating against her legs. The man took one step closer, boots crunching in the dying sunlight, and lifted the rifle slightly, not yet aiming, but hinting. Inside the ranger cabin, the last beam of sunlight flickered across Lily's pink jacket, as though warning her to stay still. Shadow planted himself between her and the door, ready. The man outside kept smiling, and then he reached the window. The night passed slowly, carrying with it the uneasy memory of the man's cold smile beyond the ranger cabin window. Lily barely slept, curled against the wall with Shadow pressed protectively against her legs. Dawn eventually seeped in, soft at first, then blazing gold as the summer sun thrust its rays across the treetops. Warm beams slipped through the cracks in the wooden cabin walls, painting shifting stripes of light on the dusty floor. For a moment, Lily almost believed the danger had passed, but then she heard them. It began as a faint crackle, static from a radio. Another voice answered, muffled but unmistakably human. Then came the metallic clatter of equipment being handled. Lily held her breath. Shadow was already awake, his ears perked, his body low and tense. The German shepherd's coat caught the sunlight, making his black and tan fur glow warm but fierce, like a creature forged by the forest itself. The voices grew clearer. Lily crawled toward the cabin wall and peered through a gap between the wooden boards. In the distance, she saw 2 men moving through the trees. They wore rugged tactical vests and weathered cargo pants, their boots thick and heavy. Both carried radios clipped to their belts. The first man, Kyle Briggs, was in his early 40s, tall and lean with a hawk-like face. His hair was sandy blonde, cut short, and his jaw was dusted with a light scruff. Kyle had a scar running from his left cheek to the corner of his mouth, a souvenir from a canyon rescue years ago that had gone wrong, leaving him deeply cynical. His brows were permanently knitted with suspicion, and even in his movements there was an edge, a twitchiness that hinted at a man always poised to run from something or chase it. The second man, Brent Holloway, was broader, stockier, with deep-set brown eyes and a thick beard that covered most of his jaw. His dark hair was matted beneath a baseball cap. Brent looked like someone who rarely smiled. The permanent tension in his shoulders suggested a life hardened by debts and bad decisions. His hands were large and calloused, fingers marked with grime. He carried himself like a man who saw opportunities everywhere, but mercy nowhere. Through their conversation, Lily caught fragments. Escaped the facility, worth a fortune now, must have headed this way, and finally, chillingly, a black and tan shepherd, young, smart, don't hurt it, we need it alive. Lily's breath hitched. Shadow growled softly. Kyle continued, if that creature's really from Rescue Unit 9, we could sell it to the highest bidder. They pay serious money for trained K9 dogs, especially ones with enhancements. Shadow's ears snapped back. Lily felt him stiffen beside her. She didn't know what enhancements meant, but she didn't like the sound of it. Brent scanned the forest with narrowed eyes. And that thing ain't alone. Heard rustling last night. He might have picked up a kid. Could use her to get the dog to heel. Lily's small hands curled into fists. Her heart pounded so loudly she thought the men would hear it through the cabin walls. Shadow nudged her gently with his muzzle, as if saying, we need to move. He guided her toward the back of the cabin, where a loose board created a small exit. The morning sunlight outside was bright and warm, a deceptive comfort amid the danger. Lily slipped through the corner gap, and Shadow followed, limping only slightly on his bandaged leg, but still scanning every direction with disciplined vigilance. They moved quickly, through fern thickets, under low branches, across patches of sunlit moss. Shadow led with astonishing precision, choosing paths that left minimal tracks. Lily followed his signals, trusting him completely now. They crossed a shallow stream sparkling with morning light. The water was cool on Lily's hands, but they didn't stop. Shadow's pace quickened until the woods opened into a small clearing. In the center stood an old memorial stone, a weathered slab surrounded by wildflowers. An aged wooden plaque hung crookedly beside it, faded by decades of sun. Lily approached, brushing moss away from the words. Rescue Unit 9, lost in duty forever in these woods. Beneath it were names, 5 of them. Shadow sat silently beside her, his eyes lowered, as if recognizing ghosts only he could truly remember. Lily ran her fingers along the engraving. She didn't fully understand, but she felt the weight of it. Shadow had belonged to something brave and something broken. Her throat tightened. Is this why you're alone? She whispered. For the first time, Shadow leaned his head gently against her shoulder. It wasn't a gesture of protection, but of grief. A sudden sound snapped the moment in half. Barking. Several dogs. Loud. Close. Shadow spun. Teeth bared. The barking grew louder. Hounds trained for tracking. Lily's heart dropped as she scrambled up the small hill at the edge of the clearing. From there, she saw them, at least 4 armed men, moving in formation along a ridge of sunlit rock. One of them, thin, sharp-faced with binoculars, lifted them toward the clearing. His posture changed instantly. "I see pink," he shouted. "The girl's here!" Shadow growled sharply and tugged at Lily's jacket collar, guiding her back down the slope. But this time, instead of leading her away from the hunters, he turned toward a narrow deer trail that stretched into the sunlight. and right toward the edge of a cliff. Lily gasped as the forest suddenly dropped away into open air. The cliff was steep, jagged, falling into a maze of trees far below. Behind them, the pounding footsteps grew louder. Shouts, barking. Shadow turned back only long enough to clamp his teeth onto the hem of Lily's pink jacket. Then he pulled her forward, away from the hunters, toward the only path left, the home. Cliff's edge, the world narrowed to sunlight, dust, and fear. The cliff's edge glowed in the morning sun, its jagged stones shimmering like scattered shards of glass. Lily stumbled backward, her sneakers scraping over loose gravel. Tears welled in her blue eyes as she clutched her pink jacket tighter around her trembling shoulders. The drop wasn't impossibly deep, but steep enough that one wrong step would send her tumbling into a forest of rocks and brambles below. Shadow planted himself in front of her, his black and tan fur bristling like a storm-tossed mane, teeth bared in a low, resonant growl. His injured leg trembled beneath the pink cloth bandage, yet he stood tall, unyielding, immovable. The sun caught his amber eyes, making them blaze with warning. Behind them, the hunters crashed through the underbrush. Kyle Briggs emerged first, his scarred cheek flushed with adrenaline. The morning light cut harshly across his angular features, emphasizing the hollows under his eyes and the grim determination carved into his face. His sandy blonde hair, damp with sweat, clung to his temples as he raised a hand to signal the others forward. Even now, his expression was one of calculating opportunity, not cruelty. He was a man hardened by survival, convinced danger justified all decisions. Brent Holloway followed closely, shoulders heaving, his thick beard tangled with dust. His dark eyes darted around the clearing, predatory and impatient. Brent's heavy boots pounded the dry earth with a kind of reckless greed. He wasn't driven by desperation like Kyle. No, Brent was driven by something simpler and uglier: profit. He lifted his rifle, finger twitching near the trigger. Behind them trailed another hunter, Mason Creeley, a wiry man in his mid-30s with sharp cheekbones and a narrow mouth. Mason had short black hair and a nervous twitch in his left eye, a remnant of a past accident involving a forest fire that nearly cost him his sight. He wasn't as bold as the others. Fear clung to him like a second skin, but he followed orders, even when he knew they were wrong. "Don't let the dog get away," Kyle barked, his voice ricocheting off the cliffside. Lily's breath hitched, her tiny hands curled at her sides. Shadow growled louder, stepping protectively in front of her. And then Lily remembered. Her backpack. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind, gentle but firm, the voice of a woman who believed that even children should know how to ask the world for help. "Always keep the emergency whistle with you, sweetheart. You blow it only when you truly need someone to find you." Lily fumbled for her backpack, shaking fingers digging into the side pocket. The hunters closed in, shadows stretching long across the sunlit ground. Kyle reached for his radio. Brent lifted his gun. Mason scanned the cliff edges. Lily found the whistle, a small silver piece of metal, nearly weightless. But in this moment, it felt like the last thread of hope in the world. Her lips trembled as she lifted it to her mouth, and she blew. The sound tore through the summer air, sharp, piercing, impossibly loud. Birds exploded from treetops, wings flapping in panic. Even the hunters flinched. The whistle's cry echoed over the cliffs, through the valleys, down into the winding forest roads. For a moment, everything paused. Then, faint at first, but rising, the distant wail of sirens floated back up through the morning breeze. Kyle swore under his breath. "Cops! They're close. Brent slammed his fist into a tree. Split up. We stop them before they reach her. Leave the girl, Kyle ordered. Take the dog. That's the money. Brent raised his rifle again, anger boiling in his eyes, and he aimed directly at Shadow. Shadow didn't back down. If anything, he stepped forward, bracing himself in the full blaze of sunlight. His fur rippled like molten bronze. His growl, too, vibrated deep in his chest. The look in his eyes wasn't wild. It was noble, defiant, as if he'd faced guns before and refused to surrender. "No!" Lily screamed. Her fear broke into raw courage. She ran forward, her small frame throwing itself between the rifle and Shadow. Arms outstretched, jacket flaring like a bright pink shield, she yelled with every bit of breath in her tiny body. "Don't shoot him! He saved me! He's a hero!" Her voice cracked on the last word. For a heartbeat, the scene froze. The child in pink, defying armed grown men, the sun pouring gold around her like a halo, Shadow standing behind her like a wounded guardian angel. Kyle hesitated. Brent didn't. His finger tightened. Mason whispered, "Brent, don't." But the gun fired. A crack of thunder shattered the summer air. Birds fled. The forest trembled. And as the echo rolled across the cliffs, Shadow's eyes flashed, a sharp, blinding glint of amber light. Then everything went still. The gunshot cracked through the forest like a lightning strike. Sharp, violent, final. Lily screamed as the sound echoed against the cliffs, her tiny body tensing in terror. Shadow lunged instinctively, bracing for pain, but the bullet never reached him. Instead, it struck a sun-warmed boulder near the cliff's edge, ricocheting in a sharp metallic ping before vanishing into the ravine below. Dust and pebbles scattered across the ground as Brent Holloway cursed, stumbling back from the force of the misfire. In the same breath, the woods erupted. Sirens wailed from the valley, first distant, then close enough to rattle the leaves. Birds fled from tree canopies in a frenzy. The hunters turned as the underbrush cracked open, and forest rangers in olive-green uniforms emerged, flanked by search and rescue medics in bright orange vests. The ground trembled with their arrival. Leading them was Officer Dana Morales, a woman in her mid-30s with a strong, athletic build. Her brown hair was pulled into a tight ponytail, and her tan skin glowed under the sunlight. Sharp cheekbones and deep-set hazel eyes gave her a sense of authority even before she spoke. Dana was known in the region for being fiercely protective of children and animals, traits forged after she'd once lost a young hiker during a winter storm years ago, a tragedy that still haunted her. "Drop your weapons!" Dana barked, her voice cutting through the chaos like steel. Kyle Briggs tried to raise his hands in surrender, his hawk-like features twisting with sudden fear. But Brent, stubborn and reckless, began to turn his rifle toward Dana. He never got the chance. One of the rangers, Officer Leon Tate, a tall and broad man with dark skin and a gentle demeanor, tackled Brent to the ground with practiced precision. Leon's deep voice thundered, "Enough!" Within moments, the hunters were surrounded. Radios crackled, cuffs clicked shut, and Mason Creeley, trembling more from fear than resistance, allowed himself to be pinned to a pine trunk by two rangers. The danger that had shadowed Lily through the forest finally dissolved under sunlight and trained authority. Shadow, however, was not focused on them. He was focused on Lily. The German shepherd limped toward her, sniffing her hands, nudging her cheek with a soft whine. Lily, shaking from adrenaline, wrapped her arms around his neck and buried her face in his fur. She didn't care that her face was streaked with dirt or that her jacket was torn. Shadow was alive. That was enough. Officer Dana knelt beside her, her expression melting from battle readiness into maternal concern. "Sweetheart, are you hurt?" Lily shook her head, wiping her tears with her sleeve. I'm okay. Shadow protected me." "Shadow?" Dana repeated softly, glancing at the dog. She reached out carefully, letting Shadow sniff her hand. Up close, she noticed the faded metal tag under his fur. Her eyes sharpened. "Hold on. He has an ID." One of the medics, Dr. Evan Brooks, approached. He was a slim man in his late 40s, sandy brown hair streaked with gray, glasses perched on a slightly crooked nose. Evan had a calm, comforting presence, the kind of man who laughed easily yet carried invisible weight from years of treating injured animals. He knelt beside Donna and examined the tag. "It's from Rescue Unit 9, Evan said, astonishment softening his voice. "These dogs were part of advanced mountain rescue teams. Most went missing after a helicopter crash 5 years ago." Lily gasped. He was a hero before?" Shadow lowered his head, leaning gently against her legs. Donna smiled. "Seems he still is." Shadow was transported to a temporary veterinary station set up nearby. The late afternoon sun filtered through the tree canopy, casting warm patterns across the clearing where the team worked. Lily sat beside Shadow the whole time, clutching his fur as if letting go would make him vanish. Dr. Evan cleaned Shadow's wounds, checked his vitals, and eventually leaned back with a relieved sigh. "He's fine. Just scratches and bruises. Honestly, healthier than most dogs I treat. Stronger, too. Almost makes me jealous." A ripple of laughter passed through the small medical tent, easing the tension like cool breeze on a summer evening. Moments later, Lily's parents burst into the clearing. Mark Carter, still wearing his camping flannel, dropped to his knees and wrapped his daughter in a fierce embrace. His rugged features, normally stoic, crumbled with emotion. "Lily, my God, we were so scared." Sarah Carter followed, tears streaking her freckled cheeks, chestnut hair cascading around her shoulders. She scooped Lily into her arms, pressing trembling kisses to her forehead. "Sweetheart, don't you ever wander off like that again." Lily's voice wavered. "Mom, Shadow saved me. He never left me." Mark turned to the German shepherd, eyes filling with gratitude. Shadow met his gaze steadily, calm yet alert. Mark reached out and stroked his head. "Thank you, you brave dog." Dana stepped forward. "Since he's been missing for years and there's no surviving handler to claim him, Shadow needs a new home." Before the sentence fully landed, Lily shot up her hand. "Ours! He can live with us! He can have my extra pillow and all the treats we can buy." The adults exchanged smiles, soft ones, the kind that came from witnessing innocence heal fear. By sunset, the danger felt like a distant echo. The forest glowed with gold as Lily and Shadow walked hand in paw down a familiar trail. Her laughter drifted through the trees, mixing with the rustling leaves and the gentle chirping of crickets. Shadow trotted beside her, tail wagging lightly, head high as though he knew this was the beginning of something new. From that day on, the German shepherd became the Carters' steadfast guardian, the protector of Summer, half hero, half best friend. And sometimes, When the warm wind whispered through the treetops, Lily swore she heard the forest murmur, "You were sent to the right one." Some people say the forest has its own way of guiding lost souls home. Others say heroes are born from training, courage, and instinct. But sometimes, something greater touches the lives of ordinary people in the most unexpected ways. On that summer day, a little girl found a wounded shepherd who had every reason to give up. Yet he chose to stand, to fight, to protect, and she chose to believe in him. Many would call it coincidence, but Lily's family would tell you it felt like something gentler, a quiet miracle, sent when they needed it most. A reminder that God often works through unlikely messengers, a stranger, a moment of courage, even a loyal German shepherd wandering the summer woods. In our everyday lives, we all face storms, loneliness, fear, loss, and moments when the path ahead feels unclear. But stories like this remind us that we are never truly alone. Help can arrive in forms we don't expect, and sometimes God places a protector in our path long before we know we need one. If Lily could speak to you now, she might say this: believe in small miracles. They happen more often than you think. And Shadow? He would look at you with those bright amber eyes, as if reminding you that bravery, love, and loyalty are gifts heaven never stops sending. Before you go, if this story touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like, share, and leave a comment about where you're watching from. And if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss the next story. May God bless you, keep you safe, and may His quiet miracles find their way to your doorstep just when you need them most.